All right, so today let's really do a deep dive into something that's been kind of like everywhere lately, body positivity.
Yeah.
It seems like it's a topic that's really out there in the zeitgeist,
Yeah.
but I think there were some interesting, um, maybe even like tensions that are bubbling under the surface,
Right.
right? Like where does this idea of like radical self-acceptance end? And then when do we start to think about some of the health concerns that might come up?
Yeah, it's a really fascinating conversation to be having, and we've got a ton of different sources that we're going to be pulling from today.
Yeah,
We're going to be talking about everything from, the history of body positivity, like how did this whole thing even get started,
right.
to how social media plays a role,
Yeah.
to even like personal anecdotes that we've come across in our research.
You know what I think is interesting is that it's easy to forget that movements like this have a history. Like, it feels like something like body positivity just kind of like explodes onto the scene and all of a sudden everyone's talking about it. But I'm guessing like this stuff has much deeper roots than maybe we realize.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you're right. I mean, it's not this brand new sparkly thing, like we said.
Hmm.
The groundwork was actually laid way back in the 1960s
Oh, wow.
with the fat acceptance movement.
Okay.
And that was a really, really important precursor to what we know as body positivity today.
I have to admit, like, I don't know a ton about that movement.
Okay.
So what was like the kind of core message back then? What were they saying?
Yeah. So at its heart, it was really about challenging all of those like deeply ingrained societal beauty standards that were so prevalent at the time.
Right.
And it was about pushing for acceptance of larger bodies and emphasizing that like everyone, regardless of their size, deserves respect.
Hmm. Okay, I mean, that definitely sounds familiar. Like
Yeah.
that's something that we're still grappling with today, right?
Yeah.
So how did we go from those early days of, the fat acceptance movement
Hmm.
to the body positivity that we see like everywhere today?
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of it has to do with social media, right?
Right.
Social media has given, everyday people a platform to share their stories, to connect with others who get it.
Hmm.
And then on top of that, you have figures like Tess Holliday and Lizzo,
Oh, yeah?
who have really become these incredible forces for change in the movement.
Totally.
They're out there challenging those traditional beauty norms, and they're showing the world that it's okay to like love the skin you're in, no
Please.
matter, your shape, your size.
Don't forget Lizzo playing the flute in that sparkly leotard at the Grammys.
Exactly.
I'm talking about like a power move. It's one thing to talk the talk,
Hmm.
but to be out there living it. I think that's what resonates with people.
Mm-hmm. It's about authenticity, It's
Yeah.
like, this is me, take it or leave it.
Exactly.
And I think that visibility is so powerful for so many people, especially,
Especially young people
Yes.
who are like bombarded with this stuff constantly.
Absolutely, because seeing someone who looks like you embracing their body
Yeah.
can be like life-changing,
Totally.
especially for people who have, for whatever reason, always felt like marginalized or ashamed because they didn't fit into that like narrow box that society tries to shove everybody into.
It's bigger than just weight too, right?
It's 100%.
This is about,
This is about everybody, every difference. Like,
Well-
we're talking body shape, size, skin conditions, disabilities, you name it. If
Yeah.
it's something that makes you, it's
Yeah.
about celebrating that.
yeah, like that uniqueness,
Yeah.
right? Like that's what this is all about. And it's so important, especially I think when you think about the pressure that like young people are under these days. I mean, they're just bombarded constantly
Hell yeah.
with these like unrealistic images that often, like digitally altered and
Yeah.
airbrushed and everything, and it's just not even real,
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
to have this counter movement of just like accepting all bodies,
Yes.
regardless of what, like again, society has told us is acceptable, it's kind of like a breath of fresh air.
It really is. And honestly, I think like the impact on mental health can't be overstated.
Yeah.
I mean, like you see a very clear correlation between body positivity and, increased self-esteem,
Sure.
a better body image, a stronger sense of self-worth.
Yeah, no, those are big.
Those are huge.
Those are huge wins.
Huge victories, and that's something I think that like can't be ignored.
No, you're right. Those are some serious wins. But I think you probably know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Has the pendulum swung too far?
Yeah.
Because it feels like there's this whole other conversation
Mm.
that we haven't really touched on yet about health. And, I've seen some critics of the body positivity movement saying like, okay, have we gone so far in embracing everybody that we're now like avoiding these like important conversations that we need to be having about, potential health risks?
It's I think that's a really, valid concern
Go
because
ahead.
on the one hand, we don't want to discount the importance of body positivity for mental and emotional well-being.
Right.
But on the other hand, we can't deny that there are very real links between, weight and certain health conditions. Like,
Yeah.
we see it, right? Like, rates of obesity, diabetes, heart disease, those are on the rise.
Right. Yeah, and those are serious health issues, like
Absolutely.
no doubt about it. But I
Hmm.
also think there's a lot of debate too about how we even define like healthy in the first place.
Oh, 100%.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
it's not always that simple.
not at all.
It's like what about even just the BMI thing? Like that's a perfect example, I feel like,
Yeah.
where it's like everyone's got an opinion about whether that's even like a useful measurement anymore.
That's such a good point. And you're so right. I mean, the BMI debate is a prime example of how complex this all gets.
Mm.
Because on the one hand, yeah, it's totally flawed.
Yeah.
It doesn't take into account things like muscle mass or body composition.
Right. Right.
So it can be super misleading for a lot of people.
Totally.
But it's still this tool that is widely used in healthcare.
Totally. It's like a starting point at least, you know.
Exactly.
But it definitely, I think it sparks debate for sure.
Oh, yeah.
I'm remembering when Adele lost a bunch of weight a while back.
Right.
I feel like that sparked this whole other conversation, you know?
Definitely.
Because it's like, was that a personal health decision or is that like driven by all this like external pressure? You
Right.
know what I mean? Like everybody seemingly had an opinion.
Everybody and their mother, yeah. And it's not just her. We saw this similar, kind of debate erupt around other celebrities and influencers, too.
So-
Or, Jillian Michaels,
Oh, yeah.
the, fitness trainer.
Yeah.
She came out and was, very publicly criticizing the body positivity movement
Yeah.
for, promoting this idea of health at every size without really acknowledging the risks that can be associated with, being overweight or obese.
Right. And it's interesting how these like public figures
Mhm.
almost become these case studies
Totally.
for these larger conversations, right?
Yeah.
It's like their bodies become,
A lightning rod.
yes, a lightning rod for this like bigger discussion about like, well, what are we even talking about here?
Yeah, yeah.
And it makes you wonder too about the responsibility that like influencers have, right?
Totally.
Like-
what are they putting out there?
Be- it's kind of a minefield, you know what I mean?
It is, because it's this weird tension, right? You
Yeah.
have this really positive message of self-acceptance and body love, which is so important for, our mental and emotional health. But then on the flip side, we can't just ignore that there are these health concerns that exist.
Yeah, right.
So how do we reconcile these two things that seem like they might be conflicting?
Totally. And how do we talk about it too?
Exactly.
Like how do we have an honest conversation
Yes.
about health
Mm-hmm.
without like straying into the territory of shaming or negativity?
Without totally derailing the body positivity movement.
Right,
Where
exactly.
that's done so much good.
Right, exactly. Yeah, that is like the $1,000,000 question, right?
Totally.
How do we do that? Like how do we talk about health honestly and with like respect and in a way that's constructive without it being about like shame or judgment?
Right.
Because it feels like that line can get like really blurry really fast.
Oh, 100%. I think one of the biggest things we need to try to do is to get over those automatic visual assumptions that we make about health.
What do you mean by that?
Well, we're just so conditioned, aren't we? To immediately equate being thin with being healthy, right?
Right.
And we just look at a larger body and we assume unhealthy. And it's
Yeah.
it's not always that black and white, is it?
No, not at all. Like I know plenty of people who, like on the surface you might look at them and be like, "Oh, they're thin, they must be healthy." But then, behind closed doors maybe they've got all these like really unhealthy habits.
Right, exactly.
And then I also know people who, society might look at and say, "Oh, they're overweight," whatever, all those labels that we put on people. But then those people are like incredibly healthy and active and, taking care of themselves.
100%. Health really is about so much more than just how much you weigh, right?
Exactly.
It's about how you feel, you know?
Yeah.
Physically, mentally, emotionally. This is where that idea of holistic health comes in.
Yeah.
Acknowledging that all these different facets of our well-being are totally interconnected.
Okay, I'm really vibing with this whole holistic health approach.
Yeah.
Because it just makes sense.
It does.
You know, like it's not just about, okay, what does the scale say? What's your weight?
Right.
It's like, how do you feel in your own skin? How are you treating your mental health?
Absolutely.
All of that, right?
All of it.
But then, okay, so how do we actually like put that into practice?
Right.
You know, like how do we encourage ourselves and each other to be healthy?
Yes.
In our minds and our bodies.
Yes.
Without like falling into those old like really toxic traps of body shaming and all that stuff.
Man, that's the question, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's a multi-layered, super complex challenge to be sure. But one of the areas where like I think we need like a massive shift is like within the healthcare system itself.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, because you're right. It can be really hard, I think, to talk about weight in a way that feels supportive and empowering.
Totally.
Mm-hmm.
And like, unfortunately, so many people have had such negative experiences, right?
Oh, yeah.
When it comes to talking about their weight with their doctor.
Totally, like being shamed, basically.
Yes.
By their doctors.
Exactly. And so it's like how do we change that conversation?
Right.
And it starts, I think, with having healthcare professionals who are trained to have these conversations, like about weight and health in a way that is, sensitive and constructive.
Yeah.
It's not about triggering people's, shame or guilt. It's about empowering them to make like, informed decisions about their own bodies.
Right. Yeah. And to feel good about it.
Exactly. And there are some really cool things popping up. Like, you've got things like the health at every size model.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Which is really cool because it focuses on like overall well-being,
Right.
rather than just fixating on that number on the scale.
Totally.
And I think that's such an important shift. It's about building healthy habits. It's about cultivating a positive relationship with your body, no matter like what size you are.
I love that. I love that a lot.
Yeah.
Well, we covered a ton of ground today, it feels like.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
It really is. It's a really big topic, a lot to think about. And it's something that, like, as you were saying, it's not just this abstract conversation. It really does affect every single one of us.
It does.
Like in our own lives.
Yeah.
So as we kind of start to wrap up our deep dive here, for our listeners out there, what's the takeaway?
Yeah.
Like, what's the thing that you really want people to leave this conversation thinking about?
I think the biggest thing is to remember that, like, that this whole idea of body positivity and then also addressing health concerns.
Yeah.
It's not like one or the other, right?
Right.
It's not like this versus that. It's about finding that like balance for yourself that feels right for you. Because it really is about like learning to love and accept yourself exactly as you are in this moment.
Yeah.
While also recognizing that you have the power to make choices that are going to like support both your physical and mental well-being.
Right.
And those two things are not like...
They're not at odds.
They're not mutually exclusive at all.
No, in fact, I think they can be very, very complementary.
Absolutely.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Where you can like truly love and accept yourself exactly as you are right now.
Yes.
While also making, healthy choices and choices that support your overall well-being.
It's a journey.
It's a journey, right. And it's a journey that's going to look different for everybody.
Like every single person. Yeah.
So maybe if we can try to shift our focus away from, just how our bodies look and start to really tune into how our bodies feel.
Yes.
That could be the thing that unlocks both self-acceptance and a healthier way of living.
I love that.
Something to think about, right?
Absolutely. So much good stuff to chew on.
So until next time, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep embracing this wonderfully complex world that we live in.